What's a rich people thing that rich people don't know is a rich people thing. My friend Julia always swore she was just like everyone else. She drove this fancy BMW that cost more than most people's yearly salary, lived in this massive house with like 6 bedrooms, and her parents literally had a full-time chef. But somehow, she was convinced she was totally normal. Last month, I invited her to come grocery shopping with me for a small party I was throwing. I needed to grab some snacks, drinks, and basic stuff. Julia seemed excited about it, saying she'd never actually been grocery shopping before, but how hard could it be, right? The moment we walked into the store, something was off. Julia just stood there in the entrance, staring around like she'd entered another planet. She was looking at everything, the shopping carts, the fluorescent lights, the aisles stretching out everywhere. I grabbed a cart and she followed me, but she was walking super slow, examining every single thing. We got to the bread aisle first, and that's when things got weird. Julia picked up a regular loaf of white bread and just stared at the price tag. She held it up to me and whispered, "Wait, people actually pay for bread? Like this much?" It was $3. $3 freaking dollars. I thought she was joking around, so I laughed and said, "Yeah, obviously." But Julia looked genuinely confused. She kept turning the bread over in her hands like she couldn't believe it was real. But who decides how much it costs? Can you negotiate? I realized she wasn't kidding. She had literally never bought groceries before in her life. Her family had these personal shoppers who just handled everything. Food just appeared in their kitchen, ready to eat. As we kept walking through the store, Julia's questions got more and more ridiculous. In the cheese section, she picked up a block of cheddar and asked me why we didn't just have someone make it fresh for us. When I told her most people can't afford personal chefs, she looked at me like I'd said most people can't afford oxygen. The worst part was when she started comparing prices between different brands. She grabbed 2 boxes of crackers. One was the store brand for $2, the other was some fancy name brand for $5. She stared at both boxes for like 2 minutes, then asked me, "Why would anyone buy the cheaper one? Doesn't that mean it's worse?" I tried explaining that people have budgets, that most families have to think about every dollar they spend on food. Julia just blinked at me. But what if you just need the food? What happens then? The checkout was the real kicker. When we got to the front of the line, I pulled out my debit card to pay. Julia's jaw literally dropped. She grabbed my arm and whispered, "You don't have like an account where someone handles this for you?" I told her no, normal people pay for their own groceries. She stood there watching the cashier scan everything, watching me swipe my card, watching me enter my PIN. She was fascinated by the whole process, like she was watching some ancient ritual. On the drive home, Julia was quiet for a while. Then she started asking all these questions about how people survive if they have to think about food costs. She wanted to know if families really sit around planning what they're going to eat based on money. When I said yes, she got this look on her face like I'd told her people still lived in caves. That's when it all came out. Julia admitted that her entire life was basically handled by other people. She didn't know what any bills cost, what groceries cost, or even how to pump gas. Her parents had assistants who did literally everything. Grocery shopping, paying bills, making appointments, even picking out her clothes sometimes. She told me she'd never even been inside a regular restaurant where you have to look at prices on a menu. Her family either ate at home with their chef or went to places where they just ordered whatever they wanted without looking at costs. The craziest part was when she asked me how people decide what to eat if they can't afford what they want. Like, what do you do if you want steak but can only afford chicken? I explained that you just eat the chicken. She couldn't wrap her head around it. Julia wasn't trying to be mean or show off. She was genuinely curious and kind of horrified. She kept saying things like, "I had no idea," and "Why doesn't everyone just hire people to do this stuff?" When I finally told her that most people can't afford to hire someone to grocery shop for them, she asked me how much it would cost. I guessed maybe $100 a week for the service, plus the actual food costs. She said that seemed totally reasonable and couldn't understand why everyone doesn't do it. That grocery trip completely changed how I saw Julia. She wasn't pretending to be normal. She literally had no clue what normal was.